Let's begin here, because many believe love can be secured by constant effort. They imagine that if they are always available, always kind, and always giving, then affection will remain strong. But the truth is far less comforting. Endless effort does not awaken desire. Predictability does not sustain passion. It creates comfort. Yes, but comfort alone is not love. Comfort is the slow death of mystery. Comfort is the silence that follows when energy stops flowing between two souls. Before I continue, let me know where you're listening from in the comments. And if reflections like this resonate, don't forget to like and subscribe. Now consider this contrast. You may have seen it in your own life. One person gives everything, holding the relationship together like a fragile bridge. The other stands still, hardly noticing the work being poured into their silence. The more one gives, the more invisible they become. Their attention, their sweetness, their sacrifice, each act of devotion becomes background noise. And then there is another kind of presence, someone who does not rush to reply, someone who lives with calm detachment, not out of cruelty, but out of wholeness. Their absence can be felt as strongly as their presence. Strangely enough, this quiet self-possession becomes a magnet. It stirs curiosity, even pursuit. Jung once observed that what we repress in ourselves will always return in other ways. When a woman hides her sovereignty behind endless giving, the shadow responds by draining her energy, leaving her weary and unrecognized. She wears the persona of the always nice one, yet within the true self longs to be seen as rare and whole. This is where the story begins, not with tactics or tricks, but with energy itself. The energy of chasing versus the energy of attracting. The difference between one who pleads for love and one who rests in her own worth. Because attraction does not bloom in predictability. It blooms in mystery, in contrast, in the unspoken tension between giving and holding back. The one who stands firmly in her own center, unafraid to be both kind and unavailable, becomes famasha, compelling, than the one who bends endlessly to please. This is the foundation of our journey. To understand why exhaustion follows those who overgive. To see why mystery belongs to those who pause, those who keep part of themselves sovereign. It is not magic. It is psychology. And it is also soul work. For in learning to stop chasing one begins the deeper path of individuation, the return to one's true center where worth is no longer borrowed but lived. We must pause here and look more closely at the wound that lies beneath the surface. It often begins with good intentions. A woman gives freely, hoping that her patience, her kindness, and her consistency will nurture love. She believes that if she is always present, always supportive, and always accommodating, her devotion will be rewarded with connection. At first, it even feels true. The attention is welcomed, the gestures are noticed. But slowly, a shift begins to unfold. The pattern of giving becomes less a choice and more an expectation. What once felt like an offering begins to feel like a demand pressed silently upon her shoulders. She discovers that every time she gives more, the other retreats further into distance. Her words echo unanswered. Her efforts vanish into silence. She becomes a servant to a bond that no longer breathes. This is the fracture point, the painful recognition that her endless kindness is not strengthening the bond, but eroding it. Instead of intimacy, she receives indifference. Instead of passion, she finds herself carrying the weight of the entire connection. She feels the bitterness of realizing that her effort is inversely proportional to his interest. The more she leans in, the further he drifts away. Here we see the first shadow of betrayal, not betrayal by another, but betrayal of the self. Each unspoken, no disguised as a yes, is a small abandonment of her own soul. Each moment of availability that ignores her inner exhaustion is a fracture in her integrity. The shadow speaks here. It whispers that her worth is being traded away for scraps of attention. But because she fears rejection, she silences this inner voice and continues the performance of sweetness. In Jung's terms, this is the persona at work. The persona is the mask we wear to meet the expectations of the world. It helps us belong, helps us survive. But if worn too long, it becomes a prison. The always nice persona promises safety, yet it hides a growing emptiness. Behind the smile and the polite words, the true self grows weary, unseen, and unloved. Consider the symbolism of a slot machine. Each pull of the lever carries the hope of reward, but when the result is always the same, the game becomes mechanical, lifeless. Desire fades, not because the reward lacks value, but because it is predictable. In much the same way, when kindness becomes constant and unquestioned, it ceases to awaken desire. The brain adapts. The heart grows numb. What was once a gift becomes invisible. This is not a rejection of kindness itself, but of its distortion. When kindness flows without balance, it turns into self-erasure. When availability is constant, it ceases to feel like a gift and becomes background noise. Love at its core is a dance of energy, a rhythm of approach and retreat of presence and mystery. When one partner carries all the movement, the dance collapses. Many people, especially those who long deeply for connection, misunderstand this. They assume that more giving, more patience, and more sacrifice will eventually be noticed and appreciated. Yet the psyche does not respond to overexposure with desire. It responds with boredom, even resentment. Jung reminded us that the more we identify with our persona, the more our shadow demands to be heard. Here, the shadow begins to stir in protest. At this stage, a quiet fatigue sets in. It is not loud or dramatic. It is the slow drain of life force. She finds herself tired, without reason, restless, in the silence, resentful of her own efforts. She may even glance at others who do far less and wonder why they are pursued while she is ignored. The answer is not found in comparing herself to them, but in recognizing the wound within herself. She has confused sacrifice with value and predictability with love. The fracture is deeper than disappointment with another person. It is an inner fracture, a split between the outer mask of sweetness and the inner cry for recognition. The shadow longs for balance, for sovereignty, for a voice that can say no without guilt. But the persona continues its performance, afraid that authenticity will drive others away. This tension cannot last. Either the shadow breaks through in anger, or the soul withdraws into silence. And so we see the true cost. The woman who gives endlessly does not only lose the attention of the other, she loses touch with her own essence. She begins to forget what her desires feel like, what her joy looks like when not tied to someone else's response. This is the erosion of the self, the slow turning of a vibrant soul into background furniture, useful yet unnoticed. The deeper truth is this: the fracture is not caused by being kind. It is caused by abandoning the self in the name of kindness. When devotion silences authenticity, love becomes performance, not presence. And in that performance, the soul feels invisible. Here we meet the first great lesson of individuation. To become whole, one must face the parts of the self that have been denied. The shadow does not only hold rage or fear, it also holds sovereignty, desire, mystery, and the right to be valued. To ignore this is to fracture the psyche further. To listen to it is to begin the path toward integration. This is why exhaustion arrives. It is not merely physical fatigue, but a spiritual signal. The body and soul conspire to whisper, "You are giving what is not asked and abandoning what is needed." The fracture is the moment when this whisper grows too loud to ignore. And so part 2 closes with this recognition. The persona of the always nice woman can no longer hold the weight of the unspoken shadow. Her devotion has become invisible. Her energy has turned into chains. The fracture is exposed. What she thought was the path to love has revealed itself as a slow self-abandonment. This is the threshold. It is painful, but it is necessary. For only by seeing where the mask has failed can she prepare to discover the deeper truth waiting in the shadows. The fracture we explored in the last part does not remain on the surface. It cuts deeper into the psyche, into the very tension between the mask we present and the self we silence. Jung called this mask the persona. It is the face we wear for approval, the role we play to keep peace, the practiced smile that says, "I am agreeable, I am safe, I will not trouble you." The persona is useful. Without it, we could not move in society. But when it becomes fused with identity, it turns into a cage. Behind the mask lies what Jung named the shadow. Many fear the word imagining only darkness, aggression, or vice. But the shadow is more than forbidden impulses. It is every part of the self we repress to maintain our image. In the case of the always kind woman, her shadow does not merely hold anger. It holds her sovereignty, her mystery, her desire to be valued without conditions. These qualities frighten the persona because they might disrupt harmony, and so they are hidden away. This is why exhaustion feels so heavy. It is not only that her efforts go unnoticed, it is that her soul is divided. She is torn between the outer performance of endless sweetness and the inner cry for recognition. Each day spent wearing the mask widens the distance between who she appears to be and who she actually is. The persona smiles. The shadow sighs. The cost of this split is subtle but profound. Her life looks calm on the surface, but underneath, there is a current of resentment. She may find herself irritable, restless, even suspicious of those who seem more desired. She may blame herself, thinking she is not enough. Yet what she is truly experiencing is the hunger of the shadow, the demand to be acknowledged, not buried. Jung observed that the more we identify with the persona, the more the shadow grows restless. In this stage, the shadow may break through in surprising ways. Sudden burst of anger, a sarcastic comment, a cold withdrawal that feels out of character. These eruptions are not failures of kindness. They are the psyche's attempt to restore balance. What has been ignored insists on being heard. Think of a room where every light is turned on, but one corner is covered by a heavy curtain. At first, you may not notice, but over time, that darkened corner begins to draw the eye. It becomes the most interesting part of the room precisely because it is hidden. The more one insists on leaving it covered, the more it demands attention. The shadow works the same way. For the woman trapped in the mask of niceness, the shadow represents her unclaimed strength. It holds the power to set boundaries, the right to say no, the freedom to be unpredictable. Yet because she fears these qualities might be judged as selfish or difficult, she buries them. This burial does not eliminate them. It only ensures that they return in distorted forms, either as inner exhaustion or as outbursts that surprise even herself. Here lies the tragic pattern. The persona promises acceptance, but at the cost of authenticity. The shadow contains the very qualities that would make her magnetic, but because they are feared, they remain locked away. She shows the world only sweetness, and in doing so, she becomes predictable. Predictability, as we have seen, is the grave of desire. The very mask that once protected her now robs her of vitality. This is why so many find themselves asking, why do others seem to be valued for doing less while I give everything and remain unseen? The answer is not in the others. It is in the dance between persona and shadow. Those who allow some mystery, who do not rush to fill every silence, are unconsciously letting fragments of their shadow shine through. They appear whole, textured, and alive. Those who hide everything unpredictable in the name of safety appear flat, reliable, and unnoticed. It is not cruelty that draws others, but wholeness, a soul that holds both warmth and strength, both kindness and limits, awakens fascination. A soul that hides half of itself, offering only one dimension, loses depth. In Jungian terms, individuation is the process of bringing shadow and persona into dialogue so that the mask serves truth rather than replaces it. At this point, the stakes become clear. If she continues to live only through the persona, she faces the slow erosion of self-worth. Each unspoken boundary deepens resentment. Each hidden desire feeds loneliness. Over time, she risks becoming not only invisible to others, but a stranger to herself. If, however, she dares to meet her shadow, she begins the path of integration. But such a meeting is never easy. The persona fears exposure. The shadow resists recognition. The battle between mask and self is the battle of individuation. It is the turning point where one must decide, will I keep wearing the face that pleases others, or will I risk revealing the complexity that makes me whole? This is the tension we now stand within. The false harmony of the mask and the restless truth of the shadow. To see this struggle clearly is already the beginning of awakening. For once, the mask is recognized as a mask it can no longer fully deceive. The fracture has exposed it. The shadow waits at the door, asking to be welcomed home. When the mask of the always nice woman begins to crack, something remarkable occurs. What was once hidden in shadow starts to rise. It does not emerge as rage alone nor as bitterness, but as an invitation to remember another image of the self. It is the stirring of an archetype, timeless, symbolic, and waiting within the depths of every soul. This awakening is not about becoming cruel or indifferent. It is about reclaiming what was denied in the name of safety. In Jungian terms, it is the encounter with the inner figure that embodies sovereignty, mystery, and playfulness. We could call her the mischievous queen. She is not a character invented by fantasy. She is a pattern of being an image that lives in the collective unconscious and takes form when a woman finally dares to live as whole. The mischievous queen unites two energies that once seemed opposed. On one side stands sovereignty, the calm authority of a soul who knows her worth. She does not ask for permission to exist. She does not plead to be valued. Her presence alone declares, "I am." On the other side is playfulness, a sparkle, a lightness, a touch of unpredictability. She smiles at life's seriousness, not with contempt, but with a secret joy. These two currents together form a magnetism that cannot be manufactured by effort. In dreams, she often appears as a figure who wears both crown and mask, both robe and laughter. She represents integration, the union of shadow and persona into a living whole. Where the persona demanded predictability and constant giving, the queen claims boundaries. Where the shadow whispered of suppressed desire, the queen dances with mischief. She embodies what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming the person you are meant to be, not the one you were trained to perform. Awakening to this archetype is like standing before a mirror that reflects not only the face you have shown the world, but also the depths you once hid. At first, this reflection feels unsettling. You see your own unpredictability, your own capacity to say no, your own refusal to be consumed by someone else's comfort. It may feel dangerous, even bad. Yet what appears dangerous to the persona is liberating to the soul. The truth is that attraction and respect awaken not through sacrifice, but through balance. The mischievous queen embodies this balance. She can listen with warmth and then withdraw into her own world without guilt. She can offer love without surrendering sovereignty. She can set limits without aggression, and she can play without apology. She does not chase because she lives in the knowledge that what is worthy will approach. This awakening changes more than relationships. It shifts the entire center of life. Instead of organizing around the fear of being abandoned, one begins to organize around the joy of being whole. The energy once wasted on constant effort now flows inward, nourishing creativity, presence, and mystery. This inner fullness becomes radiant. It draws others not because it seeks them, but because it reveals a soul no longer divided. Jung often said that what we most long for is not perfection, but wholeness. The mischievous queen is wholeness embodied. She does not exile her sweetness, nor does she deny her steel. She carries both. Her laughter is informed by wisdom. Her boundaries are softened by grace. She is not defined by another's desire, yet her presence awakens desire effortlessly. Symbolically, this stage feels like leaving a locked room and stepping into an open garden. The locked room was safety routine predictability, but safety became suffocating. The garden is alive with both order and surprise. Flowers bloom, yet shadows also fall. Paths twist in directions not always expected. In this garden, the soul rediscovers its freedom. For many, the first taste of this awakening is subtle. It may be as small as delaying a reply instead of rushing to please. It may be speaking about a personal passion instead of asking endless questions about someone else's day. It may be choosing solitude with joy instead of fearing it as abandonment. These small acts are not manipulations. They are signals that the soul has begun to claim its own space. This is where mystery enters. Mystery is not about hiding the truth. It is about revealing it in rhythm, allowing others to sense there is always more to discover. The mischievous queen does not pour out her entire story in the first moment. She shares in layers, letting curiosity breathe. Each glimpse opens another door. This is not a tactic. It is the natural expression of a life that is rich within itself. To awaken this archetype is to realize that love is not sustained by becoming easy or predictable. It is sustained by depth. Depth requires contrast sweetness and refusal presence and absence clarity and play. When both are present, a soul cannot be categorized, and therefore it cannot be forgotten. This awakening is the turning point in the journey. The fracture exposed the emptiness of the mask. The shadow revealed what had been denied. Now, the archetype emerges, showing that the path forward is not to return to old patterns, nor to swing into bitterness, but to integrate. The mischievous queen stands as a symbol of individuation, authenticity, crowned with grace, unpredictability tempered with wisdom. And so we arrive at the threshold of transformation. The woman who once felt invisible now begins to see herself with new eyes. She is not here to beg for love, but to embody it. She is not here to erase her edges, but to honor them. Her presence becomes a sovereign field, and her playfulness becomes its fragrance. This is the awakening. And son, it is only the beginning. Awakening on its own is not enough. To glimpse the mischievous queen within is powerful. But the real transformation begins when her presence moves from imagination into action. Awareness must be embodied. The soul must decide, will I continue to live in patterns that betray me, or will I begin to shape a new rhythm of being? At this stage, the choice becomes clear. What was once tolerated can no longer be allowed. What was once feared must now be confronted with grace. The first expression of this transformation is boundary, but a boundary, rightly understood, is not a wall of bitterness or an explosion of anger. It is not the harsh withdrawal that punishes, nor the silent resentment that corrodes. A true boundary is an act of sovereignty. It is the gentle but unshakable line that says, here is where I end, and where you must meet me with respect. When expressed with calmness, even warmth, it carries immense power. Think of the difference between demands and standards. A demand arises from insecurity, trying to force recognition from outside. A standard flows from within, declaring value without pleading. The mischievous queen does not demand. She embodies standards. Her no does not require hostility. It is delivered with a smile, a clarity that cannot be negotiated away. This smile is not weakness. It is sovereignty wearing grace. In Jungian language, this is the act of integration. The shadow once suppressed now lends its strength to the persona. The mask of sweetness is no longer brittle because it has been reinforced by truth. What emerges is not the false harmony of the always nice woman, nor the cold fortress of the embittered soul, but a new form, altogether clarity, balanced by warmth. In practice, this means that exhaustion is no longer accepted as the cost of love. She chooses when to give and when to step back. She speaks honestly when something wounds her, yet she does so without venom. She protects her time not by hiding, but by honoring it as sacred. Each small act of boundary setting is a declaration of self-worth. Each moment of saying no without apology is a step away from the old fracture. The transformation deepens when she embraces mystery as part of her presence. To live as an open book, with every page revealed instantly, is to drain the imagination of others. But to reveal herself in rhythm, offering glimpses, holding pauses, inviting curiosity, is to honor her own depth. Mystery is not manipulation. It is truth, unfolded with patience. It says, there is more here than what you see today. That more is not performance. It is the lived reality of a soul that is abundant. From the outside, these changes may look subtle, a delayed reply instead of an immediate one, a decision to spend an evening alone in joy rather than in quiet resentment, a playful answer instead of a long explanation. Yet from the inside, these small acts are tectonic shifts. They mark the moment where energy flows back inward, where sovereignty is reclaimed, where love is no longer sought at the expense of the self. This is the point where transformation radiates outward. The dynamic of pursuit begins to reverse. The one who once overgave is no longer chasing. Her presence itself becomes magnetic. Desire is awakened not through effort, but through the recognition that she is no longer easily grasped. Jung would say that the archetype has moved from unconscious image to conscious embodiment. The mischievous queen is now alive in action, but perhaps the greatest transformation is not seen by others at all. It is felt within. For the first time, she begins to trust that her worth does not need justification. She realizes that rejection is not the end of her value and that solitude is not emptiness, but sacred space. The fear of being difficult falls away. In its place stands the joy of being whole. This is individuation in practice, the slow but steady process of becoming the full self, not the edited version. By choosing boundaries, by embodying standards, by allowing mystery, she steps into her own center. The persona and the shadow no longer battle. They begin to collaborate. Sweetness and steel now live in harmony, and that harmony becomes radiant. This part of the journey is often the most uncomfortable because it requires breaking patterns that have been lived for years. Saying no may bring tremors of guilt. Allowing silence may feel like neglect. But each discomfort is proof that the old chains are being undone. What once felt like safety was only repetition. What now feels risky is the doorway to freedom. And so part 5 closes with this truth transformation is not a single grand gesture, but a series of choices lived daily. The mischievous queen is not a role to be acted, but a presence to be inhabited. Her boundaries, her mystery, her sovereign calm. These are not tactics to control others, but expressions of a soul that has finally returned to itself. In the next part, we will see what this integration brings a life where attraction is no longer fragile performance, but the natural consequence of wholeness, where relationships shift not because of games, but because one has dared to become real. When the journey reaches its end, we return to the truth that was hidden at the beginning. Love was never lost because she was not enough. Love faded because she abandoned her own center in the name of safety. What began as kindness turned into erasure. What began as devotion turned into invisible chains. Through awakening, she discovered the mischievous queen within a union of sovereignty and play. By choosing boundaries, she reclaimed her energy. By embracing mystery, she became whole again. Attraction and respect were no longer fragile because they no longer depended on her performance. They flowed naturally from her presence. This is the great resolution to understand that being difficult is not the danger. The true danger is to become too easy, too predictable, too willing to erase the self. A diamond is difficult. It takes time, pressure, and refinement to reveal its brilliance. That is precisely why it is treasured. In the same way, a woman who lives as her full self becomes rare, radiant, unforgettable. Jung often reminded us that individuation, the process of becoming whole, is not about perfection. It is about integration. To live as both gentle and strong, to show both warmth and steel, to embody both tenderness and sovereignty. The mischievous queen is this integration in symbolic form. She reminds us that to be loved deeply, one must first be known inwardly. The final gift of this journey is peace. No longer haunted by the fear of being abandoned, she rests in the joy of being complete. No longer tied to the performance of endless giving, she stands in the quiet dignity of her own rhythm. In this rhythm, attraction is not chased. It arises. Respect is not demanded. It is drawn. Companionship is not begged for. It is earned. And so the lesson is universal. Each of us must learn that the soul cannot thrive in predictability alone. It needs mystery, contrast, and sovereignty. It needs to know that our worth is not something we negotiate, but something we embody. When this truth is lived, relationships shift. The weak drift away, but the strong are drawn closer. Not because we demand it, but because wholeness naturally calls to wholeness. This is the quiet paradox. When you no longer beg to be chosen, you finally attract those who are capable of choosing you freely. When you stop giving everything, you begin to receive in abundance. When you dare to be an elegant challenge, you are no longer an option among many. You become a presence that cannot be replaced. The story ends not with conquest or loss, but with sovereignty. With the recognition that love begins in the self and only then extends outward. The one who is whole within becomes a mirror in which others see their best possibility. The one who honors her boundaries becomes the ground on which true respect is built. The one who embraces her playful depth becomes unforgettable. Take this final reflection. Life does not ask you to erase yourself to be loved. It asks you to live your wholeness so love may find you there. This is the mystery, the magnetism, and the gift of individuation. Before we close, I invite you to pause for a moment. Notice how these ideas resonate in your own story. Where have you given too much? Where might you draw a boundary with grace? And where perhaps is the mischievous queen waiting within you, ready to awaken? If this reflection has stirred something in you, share your thoughts in the comments below. Let us know where you are listening from and which part of this journey spoke most deeply to you. And remember this, you are not an option. You are the challenge that inspires others to rise. A diamond among stones, a soul that shines when it dares to be whole.